Welcome to today's Explainer. Okay, we're diving straight into this because honestly, we're looking at a fascinating and frankly terrifying sequence of events today. We're cracking open the official aviation accident report for an Indian Trinidad TB-20 aircraft. The registration is VT-IGC. And you know, the story of its final flight back on December 29, 2008, it's an absolute masterclass in how a chain of tiny human decisions can lead to a catastrophic mechanical reality. So we're going to break down exactly what happened step by step using the official investigation data. Let's get into it.
Picture the scene. It's a crisp winter morning, but on the banks of the Karandi Dam in India, the silence is completely shattered by a horrific sight. A beautiful, high-performance Trinidad TB-20 aircraft is just lying entirely mangled on the dry dirt. The official report uses language that paints a really grim picture. You know, the wings are practically torn from their roots, the heavy nose landing gear is entirely sheared off, actually shoved right up into the cockpit console. The pilot is sitting there surrounded by dust with, as the report literally states, pieces of windshield hanging in front of him. I mean, it looks like an absolute unsalvageable tragedy. But then, we look at the official casualty report, and we see zero. Zero fatalities, zero serious injuries. Actually, the pilot climbed right out of this mangled wreckage, pulled out his mobile phone, and just called a buddy to tell him he crashed. It's miraculous. But it instantly creates this massive knowledge gap for us. How on earth did he survive that? And maybe more importantly,
how does a perfectly functional, well-maintained aircraft end up belly down in the dirt just feet away from a massive body of water? So, what went wrong here? Was it the machine, the environment, or the human sitting in the left seat? Let's unravel this mystery together.
Section 1. The crash at Karandi Dam.
So we're actually starting at the end of the story, at the crash site itself, which is roughly 18 nautical miles away from the Gondia VOR, which is the local radio navigation beacon. Investigators arrive on the scene and immediately begin documenting the wreckage. And the sheer violence of the impact, it's really striking. This was definitely not a gentle, controlled, forced landing. The propeller blades are bent violently backwards, one side by 15 inches and the other by a massive 23 inches. Both wings are partially detached and wrinkled from severe structural stress, and that front plexiglass is just obliterated. This visceral reality really grounds the technical report. It tells investigators right away that this plane hit with tremendous force, and it hit abruptly.
Section 2. A routine training flight. To understand how it ended up like this, we have to rewind a bit. The pilot at the controls wasn't some grizzled veteran. He was a 19-year-old student pilot. He had about 71 hours of total flying experience, and just over 14 hours flying solo in this specific type of aircraft. But crucially, this was supposed to be a completely normal, officially authorized solo practice flight. And the conditions? They were absolutely perfect. The weather was officially recorded as fine and fair. Visibility was a solid 5 kilometers. The wind was dead calm, plus the aircraft itself had been fully certified, inspected, and serviced that very morning. In fact, another instructor and student had actually flown this exact plane for 35 minutes earlier that day with absolutely zero issues. So right off the bat, we can cross off environmental factors and obvious pre-takeoff mechanical failures.
But this expectation versus reality comparison is where things go terribly, terribly wrong. The air traffic controller authorized our student pilot to practice in a very specific slice of the sky, between radials 120 and 130 at a safe, high altitude 4,000 to 5,000 feet. But where did he actually end up? On radial 112, miles outside his allowed zone and practically skimming the surface, just 10 feet over the water of the Karandi Dam. I mean, that is a massive, deliberate deviation from standard operating procedures.
Section 3. Off course and distracted. So how exactly did he end up miles off course and thousands of feet too low? We're going to follow the breadcrumbs of failure here, and you'll see just how quickly things unraveled. Check out this incredibly compressed timeline. He takes off at 0642 UTC. At 0647, just 5 minutes later, he radios air traffic control to report that everything is perfectly normal and he's leveled off at his assigned 4,000 feet. But by roughly 07 UTC, the plane is destroyed in the dirt and he's making a distress call from his cell phone. We are literally talking about an 18-minute window from a normal takeoff to total disaster.
And right here is the fatal breadcrumb. During those missing minutes, the student pilot wasn't looking out the window or monitoring his basic flight instruments. No, according to the investigation, he was actively tinkering with the aircraft's GPS and autopilot systems. Now here is the kicker. He had not yet received training on these advanced systems.
His navigation training wasn't even scheduled to start until he had 4 more hours of basic solo flying under his belt. Driven by, well, pure curiosity, he engaged the autopilot, completely lost situational awareness, and drifted entirely out of his designated sector while descending right toward the reservoir.
Section 4. The water impact.
This brings us to the absolute most terrifying moments of the flight. As he's tinkering with these untaught navigation systems, the plane continues to descend rapidly over this massive lake, and we actually have local villagers who watch this happen in real time. Listen to this vivid eyewitness account from a man named Naranapandre. He says the aircraft came incredibly close to the lake, and immediately there was a fountain of water. Another witness even mentioned that the plane had been seen circling the lake on previous days, but today it came right down into the center of it, flying just 6 to 7 feet above the surface.
Okay, let's mechanically break down what a fountain of water actually means for an airplane in mid-flight. Step 1. The pilot gets dangerously low, and the spinning propeller actually strikes the surface of the lake. Now, water is dense. Hitting it causes immediate, massive aerodynamic drag. Step 2. The pilot panics. Seeing the water violently spray up into his windshield, he yanks back on the control column to climb. But pulling up sharply trades your forward speed for altitude. He bleeds off crucial, life-saving flying speed. Step 3. As he struggles upwards, he suddenly realizes he's flying directly toward a line of tall trees right on the bank. To avoid them, he throws the aircraft into a sharp left turn. Step 4. Low speed plus a sharp aggressive turn equals an aerodynamic stall. The wings completely lose their lift, the stall warning blares, and the aircraft literally drops out of the sky, slamming belly down right into the dirt bank.
Section 5. Investigating the wreckage.
It's a highly dramatic sequence, but investigators can't just take the witness's word for it, right? They need hard proof. Their job now is to systematically rule out any underlying mechanical failure that might have actually forced the plane down. So they run the tests. The aviation fuel tested and passed all chemical specifications. They literally stripped the engine down, manually rotated the crankshaft, and tested the compression in all 6 cylinders. Completely normal. Spark plugs intact and serviceable. Even the battery survived the crash with a highly satisfactory 25.4 volts. They cornered the narrative perfectly here. The machine absolutely did not fail the pilot.
So, the crucial point is determining the pilot's true intent based on what we call a clean configuration. Investigators found the aircraft with its landing gears securely locked up and the wing flaps entirely retracted. Now, if the pilot had been experiencing a real engine failure and was desperately trying to make an emergency landing on the bank, he would have lowered those flaps to slow down. The fact that the plane was found clean proves he was flying fast and low intentionally. He wasn't trying to land, he was joyriding.
And right here is the absolute smoking gun of the entire forensic investigation. Remember those propeller blades that were bent back 23 inches? Investigators noticed something incredible. The paint right at the tips of those bent blades was perfectly intact. It wasn't rubbed or scratched off at all. Think about it. If the spinning propeller had hit the rocky ground first, that paint would have been instantly ground away. The fact that the paint survived proves the blades bent because they hit the dense, smooth surface of the water while the engine was still churning out full power. It is undeniable, forensic proof of the water skim.
Section 6. The final verdict.
So the investigators gathered the radar data, the eyewitness accounts, and the mechanical teardowns. And the official probable cause leaves absolutely no room for doubt. The crash was the result of a cascading sequence of human errors. First, completely ignoring standard operating procedures by leaving that authorized safe zone. Second, the massive distraction caused by playing with an autopilot system he had no functional knowledge of. And finally, overconfidence, deliberately flying dangerously low in an attempt to skim the water, which ultimately resulted in a panic stall.
But look, an accident report isn't just about placing blame, right? It's about preventing the exact same crash from happening tomorrow. The systemic recommendation by the investigators was super clear. They recommended that flying clubs upgrade their GPS systems to actively record and download student flight paths. This means instructors can literally plug the data into a computer after a flight and verify exactly where the student went, entirely eliminating the temptation for an unsupervised, low-altitude joyride. Which leaves us with this final thought. In this specific case, advanced technology, the GPS and autopilot, actually acted as a fatal distraction for an untrained pilot. So as cockpit technology becomes increasingly sophisticated and accessible, how do we ensure the humans operating it respect not just the physical limits of the machine, but the limits of their own training? It's a sobering cautionary tale of curiosity crossing the line into catastrophe. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. And remember, keep questioning the mechanics of the world around you.